I have Disney theory. Um, I, going through and rewatching all the Disney movies and everything like that, and I'm very close to finishing up rewatching all of them. This one I think might come out around the time that I might be. This one I think is supposed to go just after I do Frozen 2. Context for this video. I'm watching through Moana, and I think I vaguely mentioned this in the Moana review that I was going to do this video where I talk about the fact of, well, at the end of Moana and her people leave Motunui and head off to go start sailing again and being wayfinders again, with Moana leading them, and kind of like returning to the way that things had been like 1,000 years before they'd end up, living on their island for 1,000 years when, Taka was, causing all of them trouble. And I'm like, well, obviously the history of that is then later on, at some point, more of the Polynesians ended up discovering Hawaii and, the Hawaiian Islands. And then obviously eventually, Europeans came along and Americans came along and things were done that were bad. No denying that. And what ends up happening is obviously eventually there's more there's Hawaiians and everything like that. And then eventually down the line, we have Lilo and Stitch. We have the movie Lilo and Stitch. Now, everything that was done for Lilo and Stitch was completely finished, as far as I'm aware, by the time Moana came out. I think that even like the 2 subsequent series that they did after Lilo and Stitch, the series and after the movies, like Stitch the series and like Stitch and Owie, I believe those were finished before Moana was made. I could be wrong on that, or they were very close to finishing up by the time Moana was made. One of the two. But there's not really a whole lot of connection there. But because I'm me and my brain is fun, I was like, well, what if Lilo and Nani are descendants of Moana? Now, there's so many different Disney theories of like Aladdin takes place in a weird dystopian future, all these other different things, to go with the Pixar theory, Boo is the witch and Brave. I can subscribe to that. I've also been watching a lot of Super Carlin Brothers lately, and they have lots of Disney and Pixar theories and such, and I just like, I want to throw one in there. I'm pretty sure other people have done the whole thing of like, oh, Lilo and Moana are related, or might be related, or something like that. There's about, 1,000 some odd years in between them, but, maybe. So, basic facts, obviously. Moana is 16 years old during the main portion of her movie when she goes on her journey, of course. Moana actually means ocean in many Polynesian languages, including Hawaiian. She is the second protagonist of Polynesian descent in a Disney movie, the first, of course, being Lilo from Lilo and Stitch, obviously. And another connection that I'll draw to a little bit later. And of course, at the end of the movie of Moana leads her people off of Motunui. They take the ships that have been, hiding in the cave, and they head out again, and they become wayfinders again as they sail across the ocean. And discover more islands and everything, probably returning to something similar about like what was going on, like with Maui, pulling up the islands, and, Tafiti creating the islands and the ocean kind of leading them there and everything. And this is actually very similar to what happens in the actual history of Polynesia, of the Pacific Islands. And I think I went over this a little bit in the Moana video. In the general vicinity, so a brief history of Hawaii, but first, in the context of the movie, it's kind of said that like for 1,000 years they've been on the island. That Taka has been raging for 1,000 years, and that slowly the darkness is going to encroach on everything and destroy everything, and that Maui, has been languishing on his island for 1,000 years. I don't remember if Maui specifically states that he's been there for 1,000 years, but given all the different hash marks that we see all over the rocks and everything like that, he's been there a very long time. Very, very, very long time. And, the legend has been passed down and everything about Maui and Taka and like all this other stuff. And at the end of the movie, as I stated, Moana and her people head back out again. The heart of Te Fiti was restored, and now, it is quote unquote safe for them to sail the ocean again. In context of reality, there was actually a time frame, about 1,000-year long time frame, where like the Polynesians had reached like a certain section of the Pacific Islands, and I do not remember which ones they were, but they had like reached a certain section of them, and like they just kind of stopped for like 1,000 years or almost 1,000 years, and then it just started back up again, and then that's when they discovered like Tahiti and like a whole bunch of other stuff, and like eventually the Hawaiian Islands. And they would eventually, and by that way, that would be like, in the context of the movie, and they stated this like in the making of stuff, that it's like, well, there's this context in real life where like for 1,000 years they stopped. So why did they stop for 1,000 years? And then, of course, they go into different, mythologies and everything like that. Like, different islands have similar mythologies. Other ones have slightly different ones, of course, because it's just like with Greek and Roman mythology, and even, mythologies in much closer ranged area of people, there's some things that are similar and there's some things that are different. And that would, of course, just extend to like these people as well. Like, different ones would have encountered like possibly different animals. And of course, different tribes would have warred with each other at times for different resources on different islands. And, eventually, sometimes they just have to stay on their islands for so long, certain populations die out, and then they go and they find them again and such. And that's just like, the way that it is a lot of times for different types of like island cultures and such like that. And, so things spread that way. And then, after they kind of stopped for 1,000 years, they spread again. And eventually one of the places that they ended up was Hawaii. So a brief history of Hawaii. I'm going to gloss over a few things just to get you some context for what's been, for things that are going on. So, based on archaeological evidence, the earliest inhabitants of the Hawaiian Islands, or what would become the Hawaiian Islands, dates back to around 10,000 to 12,000 CE. So, 1,000 to about 800 years ago. Probably by Polynesian settlers from they believe the Manganese Islands, and I apologize, I may end up mispronouncing some of these words. The second wave of migration came from possibly Raiatea and Bora Bora, and those took place in the 11th century. So again, still about 900 years ago or so, 800 to 900 years ago. And the date of human discovery and habitation of Hawaiian Islands has been subject to, different, subject of, academic debate and such like that, based on like, oh, well, this group was here, but this group may have been here, but then this group may have been here, and stuff like that. Just because sometimes, certain things last, some things don't. It just depends on what they find and how they can date it and everything. Some archaeologists and historians think that it was the later wave of immigrants or sailors from Tahiti around 1,000 CE who introduced a new line of head chiefs. Obviously, as different groups would end up coming to the islands, and this would happen on probably a lot of the islands, different groups that would come, they would of course want the resources on the island, and they would then, try to do, fight with, battle against, or conquer, some cases possibly peacefully as well, deal with the other inhabitants of the island. And, the history of Hawaiian Islands is marked by a slow and steady growth in population and the size of the different chiefdoms. Of course, different islands have different chiefdoms, and even on the islands themselves, depending on the size of the islands, they may have different chiefdoms as well, have more than one chiefdom on any given island. And, they grew to encompass the whole island, all of the islands that were in the Hawaiian Islands. And, local chiefs called the Alihi, I apologize for mispronouncing that, ALI apostrophe I, ruled their settlements and, launched wars to extend their influence, of course. And the ancient Hawaiians actually had a caste-based system of society, so very similar to what's done in the Hindu caste system in India, where it's like you're born into like a certain class and you kind of just stay within that class your entire life. Some cases you might get lucky and you might be able to work your way out of the class, that you were born into and move up to a higher class, or you may get kicked out of a higher class and into a lower class. Different caste system. And supposedly the first, Europeans to arrive in 1778, excuse me, British explorer Captain James Cook marked the first documented contact by a European explorer with Hawaii. Cook named the archipelago the Sandwich Islands in honor of his sponsor, John Montagu, 4th Earl of Sandwich. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sandwiches. Yay. There is also this thought of like certain Spanish explorers having discovered the islands several or like 100 years or so previously. But the context for what they had were like islands at a similar longitude, but at like a different latitude. Or like a 10 degrees different in latitude. And I don't think islands move that much. I know with tectonic plates they move, but not that much. And Hawaii Hawaii is actually one of 2 states that were widely recognized as independent nations prior to joining the United States. I think the other one was Texas, but I could be wrong on that one. Or California. I don't think it was California, but I think it was Texas. That were independent countries before they became, the state in the United States. And the Kingdom of Hawaii was sovereign from 1810 until 1893. So that's, 83 years of sovereignty. When the monarchy was overthrown, when the native monarchy was overthrown by resident American and European capitalists and industrialists. Yeah, that was not good. And Hawaii was an independent republic, as I said, from 1894 until August 1898, when it officially became a territory of the United States. And then Hawaii was admitted as a state on August 21st, 1959. So it's been a state less time than my parents have both been alive. So that's just the brief history of Hawaii in regards to that. So context would be for my theory is some descendant of Moana, probably not Moana herself, but possibly a descendant of hers, some great grandson or great granddaughter or something like that, because Moana and her family were the chief. Moana was the chief of her village. She taught her people how to wayfind, and eventually possibly one of her descendants or a group of her descendants, possibly because she probably married someone from the tribe or married someone from like a different tribe maybe that they ended up interacting with, because we never get any context of that. I don't think we ever will. And no, I don't think she married Maui. I don't think she would marry Maui. That's just like, no, I don't see that. They're more the friends context of anything. But my theory is that eventually like one of Moana's descendants at some point ended up in the Hawaiian Islands, and then eventually one of those descendants, eventually made it to the point where they had a child who was either the mother or the father of, Lilo and Nani, is my basic theory for that. And going into that, brief context for Lilo and Nani. The Lilo and Stitch movies, I believe, take place, the whole series takes place roughly within the mid-2000s range. And Lilo Pelikai, Pelekai, Pelikai, I don't remember how to pronounce it anymore, I'm sorry. It's never actually said in the movie itself, or it may be mentioned at some point in the series. But Lilo and Nani are, of course, some of the odd ones to actually have last names, because like Moana doesn't have a last name, and most of the Disney princesses do not have last names. By technicality, Tiana probably would have a last name, because of course she's from, the early, 1900s, or the mid 1900s, early 1900s. She would of course have a last name, but I don't think we ever hear it in the movie. But the majority of Disney princesses do not have last names. Merida would of course be Dunbrock, because she's from the Dunbrock clan. But Lilo is 7 years old at the beginning of the series, and Lilo can mean lost or the generous one in Hawaiian, hence her generosity to others in the series and possibly her loneliness. And then Nani is 19 years old in the series, and I think I mentioned this in the reviews of the Lilo and Stitch stuff, that there's about a 12 years age difference between Nani and Lilo, and they had to have Nani be that old in the context of the movie for her to be able to be Lilo's legal guardian after their parents died. So she had to be at least 18 till they made her 19. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but that's the same age difference between my sister and I. Some families have large age gaps between children. Some don't. It just depends. And then Nani is a Greek and Hawaiian name of Hebrew and Hawaiian origin. So a lot of things going in there. From Hawaiian roots, it means beautiful. In this context, Nani can be used in the Hawaiian, of course. And of course, every time I type out Nani, I accidentally, sometimes I end up typing Nami instead. So like, Nami from One Piece. And so I was like, well, yeah, Nami does mean wave. But a little bit different context there. And it is possibly a reference, and I don't know if I mentioned this in my Lilo and Stitch videos. That was several months ago, obviously, that I recorded those. And it is quite possible that Lilo and Nani are both named after Queen, and I apologize, I'm probably going to mispronounce this, but I'll do my best. Liliuokalani, who was the last ruling monarch of Hawaii, of the royal family that they had. And it is possible that Lilo and Nani are kind of named in honor of her. Lilo has the same first 3 letters of the monarch's name, and Nani's name has the last 3 letters that are the last 3 letters of the monarch's name. And it is also possible that this is truly, if this is indeed the case, then the context of the song Aloha Oi, which is a song that Nani sings to Lilo when they are sitting on the hammock the night before Cobra Bubbles is going to come and take Lilo away and take her to, go be in social services or whatever, because, he doesn't think that Nani is a good, fit for Lilo to be with. When they're singing, Nani sings the song Aloha Oi to Lilo. And this is, this song actually, I did not know this before I did research for this video. That song, Aloha Oi, is written by the last queen of Hawaii, Liliuokalani. And she wrote that after she had been imprisoned. And it was an apology song, an apology letter to a degree to her people, to the people of Hawaii, that she was not able to protect them, that she was not able to protect their home, and that she was sorry for failing them and for them being ripped apart. And, she wrote that to them while she was being held prisoner. I do believe this is during the same time as the overthrow. The monarchy was very forcefully overthrown by American and European industrialists and such. And throughout, so the queen wrote that song, and I did not know that until I did research for this video. And then I just watched the scene with the video because I can, and the scene from it on video because I could, and I was like, okay, that has a lot more meaning to it now, because originally when I was a kid, when I'm growing up and I'm, watching the movie and everything, like when I hear the song on the soundtrack and stuff like that, I just initially thought that Aloha Oi was like somehow a lullaby or something like that. I didn't think that it was a song that was originally written for the movie, but because most of the songs in the movie are obviously Elvis songs, and then they do have like a couple of songs that were written specifically for the movie. But I didn't think that Aloha Oi was one of them even when I was growing up, and now I understand the full context of what that song is. It is, Nani basically apologizing to Lilo that she can't keep her safe, that she can't keep her with her. And that just added a whole new layer to it. And as I said, it is quite possible that, if, I don't think that Nani and Lilo are descendants of this queen, but I guess they could have been, but I doubt that that's what they're trying to imply. It's just that their names may be a reference to her. Uh, and just a slight side note for the Queen. This is a picture of her at Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee in 1887. So, yeah, she was a big deal. Just like a visiting dignitary is going to come to your birthday party. Who is it? The Queen of Hawaii. Okay. Um, unfortunately that happened not too long before everything would have happened with the overthrow, but yeah. Moving on to other things that I believe are reasons why Nani and Lilo could be descendants of Moana. So these I have as different family traits that Moana seems to show, or that are shown by the Moana or her parents, and that Nani and Lilo also show. So, athleticism. We see Moana jumping all around the island at various points in times while she's growing up, and running around and doing somersaults and everything like that. And getting not necessarily contorting her way into different things, but she's obviously very good at being very athletic and even doing gymnastics to a degree. This I put toward Nani as a thing, because Lilo is still too young for us to really see, but she's got a lot of energy. I'll give Lilo that. She's very good at running. But Nani is extremely good at surfing. And we see this throughout the course of, the original Lilo and Stitch movie. I think we see this occasionally every now and then in like some of the other two movies, or excuse me, the other three movies, and in the series itself. But, Nani was possibly on her way to becoming like a surfing champion before their parents died. And Nani, of course, still very much loves to surf, and she will surf, quite often with David and with Lilo and with Stitch and everything, and we see them doing that. Nani is a very good surfer. And then we go to the connection with the ocean. Moana's connection with the ocean is obviously it chose her to be this person that it wanted to have, to, give the heart to take the heart to Te Fiti, to return the heart to Te Fiti, to restore it. And, so the water and, Moana are, very much, the water is kind of like an entity that Moana, of course, can interact with. And in regards to this, at the very first thing that we see Lilo in the movie doing is swimming. We see her swimming, and she loves swimming. She's not really afraid of swimming. We see her swimming and at the beach so many times throughout the entire series of the movies and the animated series. Lilo's 7 and she's swimming so much more, and I love that. We'll be talking about Pudge in a minute, but give me a minute. And Nani doesn't seem to have a fear of the ocean either. That also goes along with her surfing and everything like that. And probably once Lilo would get older, she would probably end up doing a lot of surfing as well. That would surprise me in the slightest. And then we have Moana bends the demigod to her will. She's like, nope, you are going to help me to Maui. And she basically, is able to not only kind of make him come with her, but she does also help convince him to help her. And with Lilo, she does this with the experiments a lot, and with Jumba, because obviously Jumba is kind of an antagonist in the beginning of the first movie, and at the end of the movie, he is now an ally. That is also kind of Stitch's doing, but throughout the course of the series and the other movies, we see him and Lilo interact quite a bit. And Lilo very much does care for him and cares for Pleakley as well, but Pleakley's not ever really like an antagonist to a degree. It's more Jumba is the antagonist and Pleakley is the chew toy for Stitch. The dog bit my head. I can see that. And Lilo works with the experiments and works with Stitch and helps them, and by the end of the initial series, Gantu is now, by the end of the last movie for the series for Lilo and Stitch, Gantu is now their ally, as is Reuben. And then, of course, via the other two series, like Gantu and Reuben have gone back to their evil ways with Hamsterville because reasons. And even at times, Lilo can still kind of get along with like Hamsterville. She doesn't like him or anything like that, and she doesn't trust him. But there are times where they see eye to eye. So that's just kind of interesting. Befriending a god. So obviously Moana befriends a god, and the fact that she befriends the demigod in regards to Maui, but she also befriends Te Fiti because she's the one that figures out that Te Fiti is Taka, and that Taka just needs to have the heart restored in order for Te Fiti to come back. And Lilo's connection to a god is, of course, she believes that Pudge the fish controls the weather. And that's why I think it's every Tuesday, she brings Pudge a sandwich. And it's a peanut butter sandwich because she can't give Pudge tuna. Because if she gave Pudge tuna, she'd be an abomination. And of course, we see her giving the Pudge the sandwich in the beginning of the movie. And this is a very important thing to her. And she will go and she'll like clean his, his little cove where he lives and everything like that. Because she, of course, thinks that he controls the weather. And she doesn't want it to rain. And because it was raining on the night when her parents died, because it made driving even more hazardous, and it caused the accident that their car was in that killed them. And Lilo, of course, doesn't want that to happen again, so she doesn't want she doesn't want everything, she wants Pudge to be happy. So it doesn't rain again, because, rationale of a child. If I feed the fish a peanut butter sandwich every Tuesday, it'll make things happy. And the fish will stay happy, and nobody else will die. I mean, Nani's the last family she's got left at the beginning of the movie, so I don't blame her for wanting to kind of that's her way of wanting to protect Nani. Seeing the good, I kind of also tie with this because, of course, seeing the good in the darkness is, of course, Moana sees that Taka is Te Fiti, and she helps with restoring the heart that way. She's the one that figures that out. She's the one that does that. And she's the one that can make that connection with Te Fiti to then restore the heart. Lilo, of course, has this connection with Stitch and the other experiments because of the fact that Lilo, when she sees Stitch for the first time and the dog in the pound, she's like, oh yeah, he's good. I can tell. It's like, for the whole rest of the first movie, she wants to try to help Stitch realize that he can be good, and she has the badness level and everything like that. And of course, at the end of the movie, Stitch does prove that he is good, and subsequently, throughout the rest of the entire series, Stitch again and again and again proves that he is good. Even when Stitch has a glitch in the second movie, well, chronologically, it's the second movie. In release order, it's the third movie. Stitch has a glitch when Stitch starts, going on the fritz and everything like that because of his programming, and he's not fully powered up and everything like that. He is, causing all these problems, and Lilo still runs after him when he tries to run away. Yeah, her and Stitch have this whole argument and everything that happens, but she does still run after him. And in regards to music, of course, Moana is a musical because, of course, we have her and her parents and her island and her grandma singing all the time. Of course, Maui sings, and then, Tamatoa sings and everything like that. And, so we get lots of singing in the movie. Lilo and Stitch is technically a musical, but the characters themselves, barring Nani singing Aloha Oi, are not directly being the ones that are singing. There's music in the background with the Elvis stuff, and there is music in the background with the Hawaiian roller coaster ride that they play when Nani and Lilo and David are just having their fun day at the beach. With surfing and with building sandcastles and everything, when Stitch is there, and they start to make these connections with Stitch more and more. And we see that, and of course, Moana and her family sing, and music is very important to Lilo and her ohana as well. That, specifically Elvis, that there is still that connection there. And, songs get passed down. I don't necessarily think that, in the context of, Moana sings How Far I'll Go. I don't think that in the context of she taught her children that song at some point in the future, or she, taught, they probably taught more traditional songs and everything like that were passed down and everything. And I like that concept. And that, of course, brings to the concept of family. Moana, with her grandmother, or of course, she always wants to protect her grandmother and her parents and her island and everything like that. And she wants to do all of those for the right reasons, is why she wants to restore the heart of Te Fiti. She wants to stop Te Kā. But she also has the moment where she has to go from shifting it to, like, I have to make Maui do it, to I have to do it myself. And of course she does, and that helps. And with Lilo, she has, Nani and then Stitch and Jumba and Pleakley and David and all of the other experiments and everything like that. And like Cobra Bubbles gets thrown in there as well, as like kind of being like an extended member of the family to a degree. And of course, like, the last shot in like, Leroy and Stitch is of course all of the experiments, and Nani and David and Pleakley and Jumba and Lilo and Myrtle and Stitch. I don't think Giantu is in the picture, of all of them together in front of, not Lilo and Nani's house and everything in front of the house, and it's all of them together. And that is just one of my favorite ones. One of my favorite pictures from the entire series is that. And with Moana, she has her grandmother and she has her ancestors that she then learns about, of course, and she still has those connections that she, follows through on and everything, and she's going to pass those connections down through her children, through to eventually what would lead to Nani and Lilo. And finally, in Stitch has a glitch. Lilo's love brings Stitch back to life. The entire plot of Stitch Has a Glitch is, and I mentioned this, of course, I talked about this much more in detail in the Lilo and Stitch reviews, is that in Stitch Has a Glitch, Stitch's power cells were not charged fully. His molecules were not charged fully before him and Jumbo were captured and taken on trial, and Stitch then got, rerouted and, hyperspaced his way to Earth and then found Lilo. Stitch goes on a glitch. And throughout the course of the movie, he's trying to do good, and it's not doing so well, and he keeps having more and more problems and glitching more and more. And of course, Lilo is trying to do this school performance and everything like that for the dance school, and she wants to use this legend of a woman who was in love with a man so much, and then he died, and then her love brought him back. I believe it was a goddess that was in love with the man, and her love restored him. There is this whole theory that Moana is connected to Te Fiti, that Moana somehow is also this representation of a goddess, of a spirit, of a deity. And Lilo, down the line, she brings Stitch back to life at the end of the movie. Her love for Stitch restores him, brings him back, makes him whole again. And I just love that idea. I've always loved that idea from when I saw that. I know that's not necessarily always the way that things work, and that Disney magic is very interesting, says the girl wearing the Aurora pricking her finger on the spinning wheel thing before she falls asleep and is only awakened from true love's kiss. But, I think that Lilo and Nani are descendants of Moana. Headcanon thing. Doesn't mean that, like, Maui is still running around out there, and that maybe he could, like, come to Hawaii at some point and, like, him and Stitch could have, like, a contest, because that wouldn't be entertaining to watch at all. Maui and Stitch having, like, a strength contest, speed. That would be fun. Just don't put Stitch in the water, because Stitch can't swim. He sinks. Then again, Maui can also do anything but float, as they state in the song. As they state in You're Welcome, he can do anything but float. So that's just my thought. If you like it, you like it. If you agree, you agree. It's just my thought, and I just wanted to do that. So I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!
Our family's little now, and we don't have many toys. But if you want, you could be a part of it. You could be our baby, and we could raise you to be good. Ohana means family. Family means nobody gets left behind. But if you want to leave, you can. I'll remember you, though. I remember everyone who leaves.